Hey everybody, welcome back to Football Talk with Vinny. In today's video, we're going over the New Orleans Saints. So obviously a very important offseason for them as Drew Brees did officially retire. So at this point now, this is the first time that they're really seeing life without Drew Brees since 2006. So again, this is going to be very crucial in the terms of who you bring in, who is going to be your starting quarterback moving forward, and what you do this offseason. Now with that being said, before I even get into the guys they lost before free agency started, again, they signed Taysom Hill to this long-term extension. That's not really a long-term extension. They can get out of it after a year or two. And I guess when you look at the deal, from what I understand, is it really just is just a little bit more money for Taysom Hill for this season. And then again, if you're him, you're taking it because it's a little more money for you this year. And even if the Saints decide not to retain you after the season, at least you got paid a little more money for this year. But in terms of guys that they lost, because they were $100+ million strapped against the cap, I think it was like minus $96 million. So they had to get under the cap before free agency started. So they lost some guys like Quan Alexander, Nick Eason, the left guard, Trey Hendrickson, the pass rusher, you had to let him go, Emmanuel Sanders, Jared Cook, Sheldon Rankins, and Janoris Jenkins. So again, if you're the Saints, it is what it is, right? You really tried to maximize Drew Brees' last couple years, so you backloaded a lot of contracts, which means, eventually that bill comes due and you got to pay some players. And, obviously this year you were so far in the red area in terms of over the cap space, you have to let a bunch of good players go. And also they had to restructure some contracts. So they ended up restructuring a couple contracts. And actually, I'm going to get into that real quick before we even talk about the free agents that they added. So with the restructures, all it really does is, we'll just use a basic example. Again, if you're not familiar with how contracts work, I made a video. It's probably my most popular one. Feel free to check that out. But basically how it works is, let's just say, for example, that you have X player and he has 3 years left on his deal and he's getting paid $10 million a season in his base salary. And he's also getting paid a $2 million signing bonus he got, which is prorated through the contract, right? So that means this current year, he's owed $10 million in base and $2 million in a signing bonus. Now that means his cap number is $12 million. So what a restructure does is, again, if you use that $10 million number figure, what they do is they'll take $9 million off of the base salary. So now for this season, his base salary is only $1 million. And then what you do with that $9 million is you give it to him in a bonus. So you pay it to him all up front. And then what happens is you're able to now spread that $9 million over evenly, of course, over the remainder of the contract, so the 3 years. So you remove $9 million, and then in the bonus number, instead of it saying $2 million, it's going to say $5 million for the remainder 3 years. So now when you look at his salary cap number for this season, it's going to show $1 million in base salary, and now it's going to show $5 million in terms of the bonus. So his cap number is going to be $6 million. But before I did that whole restructure thing, it was at 12. So by restructuring, they saved $6 million this year on this hypothetical player. Well, while yes, it helps you for this season, it actually hurts you for the remainder years, because next year he would have had a base salary of 10 and a signing bonus of 2. But now he's going to have a base salary of 10 and a signing bonus of 5. So what you did is you raised his cap number next year an extra $3 million, and also that last year you raised the cap an extra $3 million. Now, obviously, if you're the player, you're going to take it because now they're much less likely to cut you, right? Because they're giving you more bonus money. So again, if they were to cut you after this season, if you use that same hypothetical contract, they now have to pay you $10 million in the second year if they want to cut you, because they got to pay you the $5 million bonus you're due that year and the $5 million bonus you're due the third year. Whereas if they didn't restructure the contract and they cut you after this year, they'd only have to pay you $4 million, which is the $2 million that we had said the contract was for the last 2 years. So what it does is it kind of locks the team into having to keep the player, or they have to cut a player and pay him a significantly more higher salary cap number just to get off the roster. Now, the reason why that's important is they were able to get out from underneath the $96 million hole. But again, for next year, they're in a $37 million hole for the cap space. So they're going to have to try to work some stuff out next year as well. So don't think that just because they were able to remove the salary cap for this year, that everything's going to be fine moving forward, because next year and in the next couple years, you have guys like Marshawn Lattimore that are going to want to get paid, and they're going to want to be paid amongst the top of their position. But if you're the Saints, you're $40 million in debt for next year. How are you going to afford a $20 million, $19-ish million cornerback? If you're not familiar, like I said, with the salary cap, hopefully that wasn't too long of an explanation. You can go ahead and check out the other video. But let me go back to the main part of the video. Let me get into the re-signings. So they were able to get Ryan Ramczyk, the right tackle, P.J. Williams, a cornerback, Marcus Williams, they tagged him, the safety. And then obviously they brought back Jameis Winston to compete with Taysom Hill. I'm not sure anyone really knows who's going to be the definitive starter at this point. So in terms of free agency signings, they actually brought in 4 guys total. None of them are probably going to make any contribution to their roster at all. The only guy that might even see some snaps is Brian Poole as a corner, right? Because, teams run sometimes 4 and 5 corners on the field, so he may get a couple of snaps when they're in dime and quarters coverage. So let's get into the draft. So at pick 28, they took a defensive end in Peyton Turner. At pick 60, they took a linebacker in Pete Warner. At pick 76, they took another corner at Paulson Adebo. And then the rest of the picks are outside the top 100, so let me go over them quickly. At pick 133, they took Ian Book, a quarterback actually. Pick 206, they took an offensive tackle in Landon Young. And pick 255, they took a wide receiver in Kawan Baker. So just focusing on the top 100 picks, you really went all defense there, with a defensive end, a corner, and a linebacker. So again, you addressed each area of the defense, right? Front 4, linebackers, secondary. And again, I think if you're the Saints, it's very good, right? You're probably going to lose some of those defensive players when they become free agents because you're in a hole in terms of a cap situation. So you won't be able to re-sign everybody. So trying to prepare for those losses by drafting their replacements now, I think is a good idea. And then taking the quarterback in the 4th round, I think is also good. If Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill don't really work out, at least you have a guy that maybe Sean Payton can see and kind of like look at and assess and see where he's at the end of the year and if he could be a potential starting quarterback in the future. Now, in terms of the season, obviously I think it's going to be difficult playing without Drew Brees, but I guess luckily for them, Drew has been hurt in the last 2 seasons, so they've had to play 5-ish games each year without Drew Brees, and their record has been pretty good without him, just showing you, not necessarily that Drew Brees is not good anymore, but just that their roster is a very talented roster, and they can win ball games with or without Drew Brees at the quarterback spot. So I would say, to me, they're I think this is going to shock a lot of people, but I would say they're probably like a fringe playoff team. I don't know if they're going to be able to win 12 plus games to like win the division. But again, they probably are good enough to win around that 10-game win mark and probably, maybe sneak into the playoffs, maybe get in as a 4th or 5th, or maybe get in as a 6th or 5th seed. But that's going to do it for today's video. I think it was a little longer because of that whole salary cap explanation. But I know if you are a Saints fan watching this, I think it's important to understand kind of what's going on. And although, they were able to get out of the cap hell they were in this year, it's actually going to be not necessarily a repeat of next year, but it will be somewhat similar. But again, if you did enjoy this video, make sure to hit a like. It does take me a while to research these videos. I would appreciate it. And also subscribe if you're not subscribed so you can see more videos like this. But again, that's the end of the video. I look forward to the next one. Bye.